I'm Josh, I'm an investment researcher and a qualified actuary, and I have over 11 years of investment experience in one of the world's oldest, most prestigious actuarial firms. In this video, I'm going to run through my brutally honest career advice based on my experience during that time. So let's get into it. So point number one is to always be early. When I started in my career, I had absolutely no idea about investment. I'd studied pure mathematics at university. I knew absolutely nothing about the job I was doing. So I did the one thing I knew I could do to show I was keen and that I was disciplined and motivated, and that was just turn up every day an hour early. So my job technically started at 9 a.m. I was in the office by 8 a.m. every day, and I just loved having that hour to kind of gather my thoughts, settle down, and also put in a good kind of showing for my boss and other bosses around the building. What that also meant is that I asked to leave early, or I think it was even on time later on in my career, and my boss obviously said to me, well, I think you showed up an hour early for the last kind of 2 years, so yeah, definitely you can have that. So it's all about building kind of that good relationship with your seniors. This is covered off in Robin Sharma's book, The 5 a.m. Club. Like, obviously this is an extreme version, the 5 a.m. Club. I didn't have to get up at 5 a.m. to get into the office early, but yeah, I wish I'd read this at the start of my career because it would have set me up, and being early is a fantastic habit to build. Advice point number 2 is to mirror. So when I started out in my career, again, I had no idea what I was doing. I was trying to learn on the job, I was trying to do professional qualifications, but the one thing I wish I'd done at the start was just mirror the other people around me. So I got this from Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. This is actually a negotiation book. It's absolutely incredible. But yeah, mirroring. When I started, I didn't know what to wear, I didn't know what to say, I didn't know what to do, I didn't know where to sit, and I think I spent a lot of time just trying to work it out for myself. What I should have done is just looked around me and copied what other people are doing. I think the clothes that I was wearing, I wore some weird ass clothes and they were quite unique, and I wish that all I'd done is looked at what other people were wearing and copied that, because I think there's something innately human about wanting to kind of stand out or be a bit different, but the easiest thing to do when you work for a large corporation is just to conform and just mirror what other people are doing around you. Don't be too fancy, don't be too flash, and just mirror. Chris Voss obviously talks about it in the sense of mirroring what other people say, they do, their mannerisms, because basically there's a psychological tendency to prefer people that are similar to us. So people even like, people with the same name as them, there's just a natural affinity there. So if you can mirror as much as possible, it can help you out as much as possible in the start of your career when you literally know nothing. So point number 3 is to ask lots of questions and take on board this kind of, continuous learning mindset. Carol Dweck's book, Mindset, it's about being a continuous learner, about not worrying about failing or potentially looking stupid, because basically every time you fail forward, and it gives you an opportunity to learn. So I think lots of people were hired into the company I work for thinking they were hired because they were very smart. We were hired because we got really good grades at university and we'd done well in the assessment centres and things. So people are very afraid of looking stupid, particularly when you're new and you don't really know what you're talking about anyway. But the most effective way to learn on the job is to ask questions and to try things as quickly as possible. And also the faster you do that and the faster you iterate, the faster you learn. And then, 6 months down the line, everyone's forgotten about, the silly things you said, and you now are fully integrated. Easier said than done. I definitely asked lots of questions and adopted the continuous mindset, but I was often very afraid of looking stupid. Point number 4 is to read around your job and potentially do some professional qualifications. I am shocked by the amount of people that don't do this, and they just tend to operate in, work is what I experience when I'm at work, and don't really read around. Some people read the news and like to bring in current affairs, but the best thing you can do is read and learn about your industry and the theory that kind of underpins it, in my opinion. In the 5 a.m. Club, Robin Sharma talks about the 2x3 mindset, which essentially means to double your income and triple your impact, you have to invest in yourself and you have to become a more valuable individual so you can contribute better to your industry and your business. So in order to do that, you need to deepen your knowledge base, expand, improve your expertise, and ideally just outlearn your competition. Obviously, I continue to read constantly because I found it's the best ROI activity that I've got for my career. If I think about everything good and positive that's happened in my career, it's probably come from something I've read. So I think it's just so important to expand your knowledge outside of the day job and the tasks and tactical help. Point number 5 is to learn about human nature and psychology. So I think when I finished my professional qualifications, I didn't really know what to do next because I was always given this kind of next rung on the ladder to climb up. And once I finished all of that, I then was like, okay, I need to expand. I need to work out how to get onto the next rung, but it just wasn't clear to me at all. And what transpired is the thing that actually determines your success in any organization is what other people think of you. and in the value you've given to them over time. So in order to kind of work out how to basically sell yourself better to other people, I had to understand human nature and psychology. I didn't read this at the time, but this would have been the book that I would have gone to. It covers it off in fantastic detail, all the different characters you might meet and the best way to interact with people. I think you meet a lot of interesting people in the work world, and it's really important to understand how best to deal with them. I also had a particular roadblock with one individual, and this was the book that helped me better understand them. This book basically categorizes different personalities into red, yellow, green and blue, and basically the theory behind it is that different colors clash with other colors. So I think this particular person who I was clashing with was the opposite color to me, so this book gave me lots of ideas of how to approach communicating with them and how to build a better relationship. I think it's so important in your career to not make enemies, not burn bridges, and to make sure that you've got everyone on board, because as I said, your success is determined by what other people think of you and the value that they think you've given. Point number 6 is to use your initiative. So this is one of the habits of 7 habits of highly effective people. But essentially, other people in the business are busy and they're dealing with their own issues, their own objectives. So it's super important that you put yourself out there, put your hand up, and you grab opportunity when you see it. Having been a manager as well in our business, I absolutely love it when people just do stuff without being asked, because it just takes a burden off the manager. So if the manager's constantly having to delegate and ask you to do things, that takes a huge amount of their time. So having employees that have initiative and they get up and go fix things when they see problems and just sort it out themselves is just absolutely amazing. Yeah, I would definitely push on with using your initiative until someone tells you to maybe slow down or back off, and you'll be surprised as to how far the kind of boundaries are before people start doing that. So yeah, definitely use your initiative. I think when I got my first kind of leadership role within our business, I kind of put my hand up for it, made a case and said, I want to do this. I kind of grabbed that opportunity. It definitely wasn't given to me. So yeah, I think it is so important to put yourself out there. Point number 7 is to move towards weakness rather than strength. And I couldn't help but think of The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday when I thought of this point. Basically, I think you find in business that lots of people want to be involved in the most interesting kind of growth projects, or they want to be involved in an area that is perceived as very strong. So like, you know, the largest clients, the largest accounts. I always took a different approach in that I always liked to be a problem solver. So I always moved towards where I saw there to be a big problem or a headache for my seniors and try and solve that problem. I think perhaps it's due to my personality, but also I think it's because I think in that area you can definitely demonstrate a lot of value. So yeah, I was always willing to tolerate being part of a team that wasn't potentially performing at its best, or an area that wasn't the most popular at any one point. I've always had a natural inclination towards contrarianism, which I think is where this comes from. But I think the payoffs can be great if you manage to fix a big problem for people, and then you have the opportunity to look very, very good. Point number 8 is to find big potential rewards with limited downside. So if you want to find a way to stand out, one of the best things you can do is find something that has a big outsized positive payoff and very little downside. And this is like your classic entrepreneurial kind of approach where you can try lots of things, and if you fail it doesn't really matter, but then if you knock one out of the park it just goes to the moon. And I was always interested in that from an investment standpoint, because I knew that if I found an idea that had amazing investment returns, I knew that would help bolster my investment expertise and acumen. So that naturally led me to profiting from market crises, so payoffs from options, tail hedging. At the time it was discretionary macro funds as well, and that just worked for me because I liked being contrarian, as I said, because these funds tend not to perform very well for a long time, and then they perform very, very well when they're most needed. And also I love the kind of mathematical finance element of it as well. So Chaos Kings talks about these examples really well, where you're kind of a contrarian investor, but because you're positioned against the market, against the consensus, and eventually proved right, it can really help your reputation and also your career. This is also covered by Nassim Taleb, who talks about being anti-fragile. So the idea of anti-fragile is you are able to profit from big crises or volatility in general. And I think if you want a sustainable long career, then following this kind of advice would be really helpful. Point number 9 is, if you don't know what to do, explore. So after the COVID pandemic hit and a lot of my funds have made a huge amount of money, I knew that no one was going to want tail hedging, or tail hedging which is not going to be a profitable strategy for the foreseeable future. We get a market crisis once every 10 years, so then it became, what was I going to do next? And I actually had no idea. I was interested in digital assets, I was interested in sustainability, and I eventually landed on sustainability just because it's much bigger here in the UK and Europe. But I think a really important lesson from that part of my career was, if you don't know what to do, just explore. I was going to marketing events on Bitcoin. I was researching internally in terms of like getting internal mentors and looking at sort of businesses that we were interested in acquiring. and that eventually led me to climate and sustainability. But yeah, there were some books that definitely helped me through that process. So Seeing Around Corners by Rita McGrath is not a very popular book, I don't think, but it's basically about how you can kind of see the next kind of trend in your industry coming. And the phrase I love from it is snow melts from the edge, so you have to go to the periphery of what's going on to understand where the new trends might come from. Also, I guess 0 to 1 and the Almanac and Naval Ravikant talks about how important it is to just escape competition through being unique. And I've always hated aggressively competing for a finite pie. I've always liked to go my own way. And these books have actually kind of ratified that approach. It's way more entrepreneurial, potentially more risky, but it's definitely where the greater returns are. Point number 11 is about overcoming obstacles by going an alternative way around. So I got this actually from Adam Grant's book, Hidden Potential, where he talks about if you're trying really hard to progress against a goal, but it's not getting anywhere, sometimes the best way to unblock that is to go find or do something else completely unrelated. And I couldn't resonate with this more. So I actually came up with an idea that kind of transformed our industry. And I was so proud of myself. It was one of the best days of my life when I realized that I kind of put this 2 and 2 together and was able to kind of, create a massive leap forward. But it was just an idea, and I thought I should be rewarded for the idea. I now know that you get rewarded for the execution, and the execution is everything that matters, because ideas can come and go and can come from anywhere. Anyway, I was very frustrated with how my career wasn't progressing. I'd had this amazing idea, and I was really frustrated that I wasn't moving forward. So I decided to just absolutely throw myself into exercise and cycling. And I know that sounds bizarre, but I just absolutely threw myself at this. I think, I just didn't know what to do. So I just picked something that I liked and decided to just attack it. And it turns out that was one of the best things I could have done for my career, interestingly. Because one of the things that happened as I threw myself at cycling was I became a ride leader for our local cycling club. And I'd never really had an opportunity to lead a gang of, 10 guys out on something that's very clearly defined. And it really helped me develop my leadership skills and also generate familiarity with that feeling of being a leader. And that's something I definitely needed in my career, because I'd led small teams in a kind of very collaborative kind of approach. Whereas if you're trying to change the trajectory of a particular industry, it requires a very kind of, focused project management, I guess almost like an emergency based approach. So being a ride leader actually helped train me up for that, I would say, and it's not something I was used to. I also developed loads of other skills like resilience, discipline, and being more results focused as well. So I started off just by cycling because I liked it and running because I liked it, but then I decided to just get some results out of it as well. So I did a marathon, I did the Frontier 300, which is a trans Scotland bike race. I did Trans Wales, so overnight cycle ride across Snowdonia. I did a High Rocks competition, which is a fitness kind of race here in London. And yeah, I did the marathon. So it taught me a huge amount of things. I also learned marketing through that as well, because I was posting all my rides on Strava, and I had people from work on Strava, and that instantly raised my reputation at work because they just couldn't believe that I was doing such a huge amount of events and long distance cycling and stuff. So yeah, that taught me a lot. And it definitely raised my profile internally. It allowed me to be more leadership focused, and yeah, eventually I got promoted off the back of it. And I would actually say that feels like that was the majority of the reason why I got promoted. Building reputation and skills through cycling. Point number 12 is volume versus efficiency versus effectiveness. And I came to this quite late, but it's something I think about a lot now. So the idea is that when you're new to something, you just do a huge amount of volume because you don't really know what you're doing. Going back to point number 1, it's I had no idea what I was doing in my day job, so I just turned up and did my best and did as much of it as possible. I kind of threw myself at it. Over time, you learn that you can be efficient, so you don't have to do as much volume, you don't have to spend as much time doing stuff because you've worked out what's important and what's not, and you just do that really efficiently. The next step, which I think I've only just kind of come across, is doing things that are effective. So what is the right action that has a disproportionate impact on your results? This is definitely covered in Richard Koch's book 80-20 principle, because he talks about finding the 20% of things that lead to the 80% of the outcomes. But related to that is kind of the idea of leverage. So some amazing ways you can get a lot of leverage is by managing a big team, managing a lot of money, presenting to a lot of people. This is where you put in one kind of finite amount of effort and it gets multiplied kind of naturally. So yeah, definitely efficiency versus effectiveness is something that is relatively new to me, and it's something I wish I'd learned earlier. Point number 13 is being results focused. Again, I was stupidly late to this. I'd mentioned I kind of got there a bit through my exercise and the kind of physical achievements that I was achieving, but I never really applied it to work, and I wish I'd done it earlier, because all work care about are what results did you achieve. And I still come across people now saying things like, I'm really good, like I'm really smart, or yeah, I'm doing all this really great stuff. And so often people are not focused on, well, what did that lead to? What did you achieve? What did you deliver? So I think this is, you know, so important and so overlooked. And it's covered really well in Brian Tracy's book, Get Smart, how people are activity-based versus results-based. So now I just focus on getting results. And the interesting thing about being results-focused is that you can get there however way you want. Like some people get there by doing, you know, referencing the previous point, loads of volume, loads of being really efficient, or being really effective. So I think that being results focused is often very much overlooked. In Get Smart, Brian Tracy says your value to the company is essentially defined by, you know, being able to deliver key projects under budget and on time. And then interestingly, as you start delivering better and better results, you get more and more responsibility, then you can get big teams that can help you deliver those results, and eventually you're the CEO or whatever. Running the whole company and getting results for the company. So yeah, be results focused. You know, think about the results in your personal life as well. So like for me, I've got results in my personal life. So I've lost, you know, X amount of weight, or I completed a marathon. Like these are all kind of tangible, really measurable results that make it a lot easier for you to demonstrate your value. Point number 14 is give and you shall receive. I don't know if it's a Bible quote, but anyway, as I said, I think lots of people spend a lot of time talking about what they are doing and showing how good they are, clever they are, smart they are, and therefore they are deserving of, you know, lots of money, big salaries, whatever. But I like the saying of your value is basically what you give minus what you take in pay. And therefore, if you want to maximize that equation for the amount you kind of take away in pay, then you're going to want to be giving a huge amount, and you want to be giving more than what you take in pay. That's actually a point that's spoken about in Napoleon Hill's The Law of Success, where he talks about doing more than what you're paid for. I actually personally always try to manage this equation through typically just to do by flexing one variable, which is I never really ask for huge amounts of pay. I always try to be kind of focusing on the value side and not really pushing for more pay. And I think that always worked out positively for me, and I got pay rises anyway because I think my value was recognized. But more recently, I've been trying to focus in on my value. So how do I properly optimize my value? So that particularly means if you give to receive, then you need to be working out what you can give to the company. And more often than not, it's more about what you can give to your colleagues or your boss. So like, what are you doing for them that's really helping them out? One of the things I particularly like to do is focus on alleviating pain points or frustrations for my boss, because I think that demonstrates a lot of value, because people like pain to be removed. So there we have it. That was my brutally honest career advice based on 11 years of experience at one of the world's oldest and most prestigious actuarial firms. Interestingly, I kind of took you through this in the chronological order, so starting off from the very beginning of my career and what I wish I'd known then and the kind of approach I took which seemed to work, and finished off with kind of more advanced things that I'd got to much later. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to hear more from me, don't forget to check out this one here. Thank you.